What's up, amigos? Today I'm going to show off an in-depth guide on basically your early game, your mid game, and also your late game plays that you want to do in Nightrose for premium. If you want to see the deck profile more in-depth, you could check out the link and also the description as well. Both videos released at the same time. And if you're interested in learning more about the Negro Lily lines of play, that's in a different video, and click that as well in the description or on the video somewhere here. So starting off with the turn 2 plays, we have Colombard, and essentially you want to use a CB where let's say you pay the cost. Your go-to play is usually a ghost ship. Ghost ship here will allow you to have 2 attacks, so that way you have your drive check and then this will attack, draw a card, and retire itself. You also leave your field empty. This is really good and vital against Shiranui as well. But this also sets up ghost ship into the drop zone for later usage for like Bandit Rum, your Obadiah Plays, and also like Bad Bounty and Bartholomew. So having the ghost ship already in the drop zone is key. Other targets that you want to get are either Greed Shade, Beatrice, and Honolly, and there's plenty of more that you can try out depending on your build. I'll start off with Greed Shade. Greed Shade will get you anything that you need in mill 2 as well. So if you see something in your drop zone, you can grab it. This comes out more with mill builds, such as like Navigator, for example. So that's become more vital then. You could also use Beatrice to help build a field essentially. And if you want to get more attacks, so you can revive Beatrice and then Soul Blast the Great One that you have. This comes up more when you're going first, and you can attack with the 8k and then maybe a 12k for safe, like, you know, damage checks, and then of course your drive check here. And then of course Honolly, so in case you are going against a high multi-attack deck, if they can't get rid of it, you can use it as a booster as well, so that helps make that Vanguard line a bit threatening. If not, then you can just remove it from play and you're safe for a turn at least. Now to the more interesting plays. So your turn 3, you'll go into Bandit Rum, and there's a couple of ways you can do this, but I'm going to show you a simple route. So once you get into Bandit Rum, you'll get your 2 protect markers. So let's just keep these on the side for now. You can use Nightrose's skill to revive a card such as Beatrice, and Beatrice can Soul Blast something, and then revive, let's say, the ghost ship that you use from turn 2. And so this is a very simple play for 4 attacks. You want to ghost ship first. This will retire and draw a card. Here, I'll put it right here. You can attack with your Vanguard. So your triple drive will you these cards, and potentially you stack the triggers onto Beatrice. Then Bandit Rum skill will revive the ghost ship once more. Beatrix, and then ghost ship. And then Ghost Ship will draw you another card. And so in this demonstration, you have 2 cards from Ghost Ship, your drive checks, and then your protect markers. So essentially you have 7 new cards to work with for your next following turn. And it's very straightforward turn at that point too. An alternate play, let's say you do have Beatrice in hand and you immediately revive it without using Nightrose's stride skill for the CB, and you save that for later. You can poke with these first, and that's your first 2 attacks essentially. And then your Vanguard can attack. And at the end of the battle, you can revive a card like Nightstorm, and you can put it over here if you want. You miss out on stacking triggers on any rigger that can attack still, but that's okay. Then you can use Nightstorm, and at the end of the battle, you can get Beatrice, and you can keep extending, assuming your opponent hasn't gotten any like triggers in their damage check, and you can just see you can have much more attacks in this build. So you may be asking yourself what's recommended. Do you go with 4 or 5 attacks, or do you try to extend? It really depends on the opponent, also the matchup. I usually recommend to go more conservative, you know, plays that you know that can actually yield some value while drawing some advantage. As you can see, using Counterblast Soul can also hurt your resources in the long term too. I wouldn't extend as much unless you know they're already at high damage for, let's say, in your turn 1 and turn 2, your drive checks critted them, right? And so that could be an opportunity for you to actually extend, and you could just win upright. Also, as a tip, you can use a card like Negroborn to revive your main phase as well without using a CB or a Soul. But if your drop zone's not 10 or more, then you're limited to reviving grade 1, so just be mindful of that. Let's say you're going second and you're riding Beatrice, you'll get your protect marker, let's say here. And then you Soul Blast, let's say a card like Rough Seas. You can also revive a beater if you want to, but in this case, I'll just immediately revive that. Then you pitch to stride into Big Obadiah here. You can use Rough Seas to draw a card immediately as well. Let's say this is your draw. Now with Obadiah, you're going to get actually some combo pieces, and here's an example. Typically, it's either a mix of Forbidal, Inglarf, Grenache, and then maybe a Negrabone for revival later on too. If Impix is relevant in the matchup too, these are some key ones. You can use Cannoneer and other cards that you want if you don't have them just yet. This example, let's say we use these 2. Then Inglarf can Soul Blast, grab the Forbidal, and Forbidal can grab us these cards. And of course, hollow the cards that can be hollowed, of course. Then an attack pattern could be Skull Dragon, then Nightstorm, and then Nightstorm skill. If you have a Beatrice, you can further extend attacks, and you can revive the Skull Dragon. And then this could be a column swing. This can also attack and do your drive tracks, and then Skull Dragon will be the last one in this case. You could also do Skull Dragon, then your Vanguard, and then potentially stack triggers onto this column too. There's flexibility, it just depends what can hit at the moment too. You'll also retire this at the end of turn and actually be able to counter charge too. You have 2 rear guards that you can retire with Negro Lily, for example. More than likely it'll be the Beatrice anyway, but this helps you with your setup. In this case, we're able to have a protect marker and a draw from the Rough Seas Banshee thanks to Beatrice. If you use a card like Ghost Ship though, you can actually get an extra card or two further as well. It really just depends on what you have in your hand, especially if you already have let's say an Englarf in your hand or a Farbadeau in your hand or something, I don't know, whatever you have at that game site. If you have access to Riveting Franche, and let's say you have a third CB, essentially, you can go Skull Dragon first, this will retire, and then boost, skill, revive the Nightstorm, and then this can attack, and at the end of battle, you can go into either a Skull Dragon or you can extend again with Beatrice and revive the Skull Dragon on the other side. So it's really up to you. Also, it's worth noting that if you did a Grenache while you're a Nightrose instead of Beatrice, you can use her GB2 skill to revive it again and further CC for a total of 4. So that way you can mill in your drop zones to have more quality if you need it, but also just full counterblast for next turn, essentially. Now to some fun plays. We have a Bad Bounty turn. Let's say you revive Skull Dragons with either Negerbones or Beatrice's, and your first attack can be Bad Bounty. Do your triple drive, counterblast 1. This will go back to G zone and ride the Nightrose V series. And the reason you want to do it in this order is because she has a passive 5k, which will make your Skull Dragons and any of the attack extenders that you have more stronger. These will retire after the attack, and then Nightrose V can attack to revive a column, which you'll revive a Beatrice with a Skull Dragon, and the Beatrice can revive the other Skull Dragon again, or a Ghost Ship, either way. You do a Twin Drive, and then stack any triggers onto these guys and attack, and that's a simple 6 attack turn with benefiting from Nightrose's skill as well. And then you also are left with a rear guard still on board too, because you can't even boost with Beatrice if you wanted to, but this is important for Neger Lily as well. If you have a field set up, let's say where you have either Riveting or Nightstorm, this is where you can essentially take advantage of it and then do the skill and then ride Nightrose V. And in this case, you'll attack with the Skull Dragon here, but you can also just attack extend this way with either Nightstorm or Riveting at that point, and you'll get an extra Skull Dragon attack here and attack. And then of course, at the end of when this attacks, then you can do Beatrice and Skull Dragon and then Soul Blast and boom, another Skull Dragon. So depending if you have 1 or 2 CB extra on top of that, that is a 2 to 3 counterblast play, so be wary of that. You can also revive Beatrice to get another attack on top of that if you had a Nightstorm. So then you can just get another poke in and she'll get 5k from Nightrose and then retire itself, so it's now eligible again to grab with the Nightrose. A different alternative play, let's say you don't have Nightrose V because it was in the damage zone or something, you can do a similar play with Beatrice, and what you essentially can do is attack with the Skull Dragon first, that'll retire, then with Bad Bounty, stack any triggers onto this one, do the counterblast, and then ride Beatrice here and Soul Blast to revive the Skull Dragon immediately. You can attack with this, and then this will retire. Because it retires, her skill can trigger, and you can CB and get Jesse, because he is a ghosty. And Jesse will also give you a counter charge at the end and retire, which you can use Beatrice skill. It's not once per turn, and ideally will be like a Tommy the Ghosty. Keep in mind that essentially all the ghosties will get 5k power as well. And maybe you want to like do drive checks and give power to the weaker unit, and then your Skull Dragon's going to be big anyway, so that can attack. And so that's another way to attack extend if you don't have Nightrose V, but you have Beatrice though. The last one I'll show for Bad Bounty is, let's say you only have 1 CB and you really want to go this route, or maybe you just don't have Nightrose V, and maybe you don't have as much soul or counterblast to go off with Beatrice to make it worth it. This is just an alternate play, but essentially you can do the same thing, use the CB at the end of the battle, ride Nightrose G series with Vanguard, since it's kind of the weakest, any drive checks, and then you can attack. When this retires though, you can use her skill offensively, mill 3, and revive the card that was retired, which will be Skull Dragon. So now you can attack with Skull Dragon again, and then this one can finally attack as well. So this also extends attacks without using a CB as well, or Soul. The next play I'm going to show is Bartholomew plays, and essentially very similar manner. You want to revive beaters in the main phase if possible, 2 Skull Dragons ideally. They will attack first and they will retire themselves. And on your Vanguard, this is also, whether you have 30 cards in drop or not, you could still do the revival skill. And you can revive Beatrice, Tommy, and then also Skull Dragon. They have to be different units. They each get +5. Then Beatrice skill, Soul Blast 1, and then revive the Skull Dragon in its place. So that's how you're still able to get more Skull Dragon attacks. Any drive checks, put it on here, and then attack. And this is basically a 1 counterblast play, ideally. An alteration of this is that essentially you can revive Nightstorm in the mix first. Let's say your opponent's at 5 damage, so they have to guard everything essentially, right? You'll attack with Skull Dragon. Oh, this is, of course, when the Vanguard attacks, revive all these 3, and then attack with Skull Dragon. You can Nightstorm. He gets a +5 from Bartholomew because he's 16 at this point, and at the end of the battle, you can get a Beatrice and then Beatrice's skill, Revive Riveting. Now Beatrice can swing for 12. Remember, if you have 30 or more, they have to drop 3 cards each time for an attack. And then Riveting Boosted now can actually use that skill and revive another Skull Dragon. They have to guard this as well, 3 more cards, and then Skull Dragon again. So with an extra 2 CB on top of the CB that you can have more attacks, essentially. Let's say with the GB8, you revive a full field and you have plenty of counterblasts, something like this with a Skull Dragon, boosters, and a Riveting Frange. And so they each get 10k, so your boosters are really massive too. So Skull Dragon can attack by itself first, retire, then boost it with Riveting Frange, you can CB to bring Nightstorm. Nightstorm, assuming they're like, let's say 5 damage or something, Nightstorm can attack, Nightstorm can CB now to call over Riveting Frange with Beatrice, and Beatrice will revive Riveting Frange once more, but on the other side now. You can attack with a 12k, or you can attack with Vanguard to give triggers, if that makes sense too. It just depends on the order. Let's say they didn't get any triggers, right? You can attack with Riveting Frange, and you can end with a beater, or if you have a second Beatrice, then the second Beatrice can Soul Blast and then bring the Skull Dragon into play at that point. And again, depending on if you need to apply tribe checks to make something hit, and this boosted of course, then your Skull Dragon as your last attack. If you don't have CB, you can revive everything pretty similarly. The difference is that you can have Nightstorm, but also have a Jessie in this case. The reason you want to do this is because Jessie will give you a CB after it finishes its attack. And now you can have this attack boosted. 13 plus 11 will make 24, so that hits over a trigger threshold, but of course 10 power up, this will make it bigger as well. And at the end of that battle, you'll revive Beatrice, and then Beatrice will Soul Blast and revive a Skull Dragon that way too. And in this case, you can have 35 and then attack boosted with the Vanguard, get drive checks, and then put it on the Skull Dragon, and boom. So you still have access to 5 attacks on a GB8 initially where you didn't have CB if this comes up. And again, there's a lot of combo plays that you can do with Nightrose. This is just kind of like the go-to place, and as you can see, if you have more CB or so, you can keep extending as much as you can. I hope this was very helpful too. Again, if you want to see more Negro Lily types of plays, that's in the other video, and if you want to see more in-depthness with the deck profile, that's in the other video as well. You can support the channel by using affiliate links such as TCG Player, Trading Card Mint, 50 Card Shop, Card Trader Zero, and then of course, check out Dueling Guard's anime swag. And as you can see, this is the Jinwoo solo leveling playmat. It's really beautiful to increase your anime swag. On to the next one, amigos. Bye!